Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to Conversations about Transformation, the Keys to Lasting Change. I'll introduce the folks you can see or will shortly hear with me in a moment, but first I'll introduce the conversation series. What we've done here at NLP Marin is pair some of our master trainers with some of our graduates. And the graduates are doing extraordinary things in their lives and work with the training that they received in transformational NLP. And we're also going to dive into our unique perspectives on change and transformation, which is especially timely at this time of year when most everybody's attention is on changing stuff we don't want anymore and hoping it will be lasting. And so we'll have some keys about how that can be. If you are not familiar with NLP Marin yet, we are the only place in the world to learn transformational NLP, which is a unique form of healing and change. Through our curriculum, which is quite vast and varied, our students learn incredible perspectives and skills. They do their own highly personal change work and personal growth work. And they take those skills and really translate that into masterful excellence in their fields, as you'll see. So I want to welcome today's conversation, which we've titled The Inner Self as the Key to Outer World Success. And this is a conversation with Christopher VandenBrink, who's coach, facilitator, and master NLP practitioner. Chris is waving. Want to say hi, Chris?
Hey, everybody. My name is Chris.
There we go. And also Carla Camou, master trainer here at NLP Marin.
I'm Carla.
And Carla Buchheit, co-founder of NLP Marin.
Hello, I am Carl.
All right, so real quick, I'm LiYana Silver, and I'll be emceeing today and guiding the conversation. I also am a graduate of NLP Marin and have absolutely translated the material into my own private practice as a transformational coach for women and into authoring my first book called Feminine Genius, and just definitely into my parenting and every facet of my life. I also work at NLP Marin in the marketing department, taking the same tools and perspectives of transformational NLP and applying that to the marketing and messaging of NLP Marin, and also for some of the graduates who want their messaging and their sales and their marketing to not be sleazy or manipulative, or to their work to be undermined by techniques that just no longer serve. So I'm glad to introduce, Chris, I'm going to read out your official bio and then add anything that I might have missed. Sound okay?
That sounds great.
Okay, so I'm glad to introduce more formally Chris or Christopher VandenBrink, who is an executive coach, licensed architect, and master NLP practitioner. His training as both a designer and coach informs how Chris works with clients by endeavoring to understand and hold where they are as valid, which provides a safe place to create what they want most in their personal and professional lives. For his entire career, he has been engaging groups and individuals to craft sustainable solutions that are thoughtful and unapologetically beautiful. Chris believes that we are constantly in a state of transformation and learning. And he holds a postgraduate degree in alternative design from Archworks and a master practitioner certification from NLP Marin. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, LiYana.
Did I miss anything?
No, that was great. Shall I take it from there?
No, you wait a second.
Bit? Okay.
Oh, great. Unless you want to embellish about your greatness, then definitely.
No, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Well, yes, hold for 1 second and I'll
give the other kids a chance, Chris, okay?
That's right.
We'll get there.
So I'll formally introduce Carla Camou, who's a master trainer here at NLP Marin. If you aren't familiar with Carla yet, Carla Camou has been involved in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, for over 30 years. Longer than some of us listening have been alive. At NLP Marin, Carla trains students and training assistants, creating a special space for accelerated and joyful learning. Carla works alongside Carla Buchheit in continually refining and evolving the body of work known as transformational NLP. As a training designer, she has the profound ability to make skills that seem magical to most accessible to the many. The premise for Carla's work is a deep respect for the individual's experience and a full embracing of the strength they already have to generate new experience. The result is an elegant change that enriches the client's precious journey called life, at work, at home, and in relation to others, and in all matters of the heart. Carla, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. Nope, that sounds good.
Okay. And last but not least, Carla Buchheit, co-founder of NLP Marin for over 40 years, better chance of being longer than some people listening have been alive. Carla has practiced, taught, and extended the technology now known as transformational NLP. Carla trains from the heart, backed with a brilliant intellect, insatiable curiosity, and unconventional humor. I think we added in conventional humor too, Carl, didn't we?
I was wondering what my problem with conventional humor was apparently, but this is fine. Please go ahead. This sounds very good.
It will do for now. Okay. The result is a fun-filled learning experience where all aspects of the students and their lives are welcomed and included. He challenges his students to explore themselves, the world, and life in a way that respects and uplifts everyone. His ongoing, intense private practice with clients keeps what he presents fresh and alive. All right, now that we have that fantastic foundation, Chris, I definitely want to hand the mic over to you. So let's talk about the inner self as the key to outer world success, and take it where you wish. I do have a first question I like to ask, which is generally, what is your work and life like these days, especially as you've incorporated transformational NLP?
Yeah, and I think I was kind of gearing up for that question, which is why I was ready to take the reins after hearing my brief bio, because it was such a good way to lead into where I'm at now. And I think, the bio now is somewhat incomplete without talking about also how I've gotten here. And so just to embellish a little bit about where I am currently an executive coach working with startups primarily, generally speaking, VC funded, not all VC funded, but people that are creating new endeavors, new businesses, new organizations that are either creating new things in existing spaces, existing markets, or creating whole new markets and whole new spaces. So in that, there's a lot of uncertainty and transformation and design, right, of new things in that. And I think it's, for me, hard to separate what I'm doing externally, as I describe it, with what I've been going through internally. And what I'm doing now is a bit different from where I started when I first joined or first found NLP Marin. So that was now 9 years ago. Wow. When I first came into NLP Marin. And at the time, I was working as a full-time architect, helping people create new buildings in the world. Maybe there's a thread there. But I was definitely on a path that I had been on for most of my life, I would say. If not before high school, definitely in high school, I had this thought to be an architect. And when I found NLP Marin, I was at a point in my career where I kind of knew what every day was going to be like. There was a lot of consistency and stability and comfortability. And at the same time, a draw or a pull for something more or something different. And at the time, I didn't quite know or have the words for what that was. I have some more words now that I can maybe throughout this conversation bring up. But it started for me a journey of really trying to discover not only who I wanted to be as it relates to work and life, but also who I was divorced from any title, right? I definitely had an identity with the idea of being an architect for a long time. And so it was definitely a slow, comfortable, sometimes maybe uncomfortable actually, journey from disidentifying with how I saw myself as an architect, and then really deciding like what I wanted and who I wanted to be in the world, which I found NLP Marin and found this one-on-one relationship with helping other people do the same thing, create what they want in the world. And got lucky to meet a fellow who was in an organization that I now work with called Reboot. And am very, I would say, fulfilled at the moment, helping people, using this toolkit that I've learned at NLP Marin to help people chart new companies, new organizations, and new paths in their own lives as I continue to do the same for myself.
Beautiful.
Yo.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. So Chris, you and I were talking before a little bit about what would be fun to explore. And you said you loved this metaphor or theme of the undiscovered country as our internal self or an internal landscape of self.
Yeah.
So will you share more about that and how we understand our inner landscape as it relates to how we are showing up in the world?
Yes. So first and foremost, I have to give credit where credit is due, which is The Undiscovered Country is a title of a Star Trek movie, the original Star Trek. It's not the best Star Trek movie, but I really like the title and I've definitely taken a cue from it. And for me, it's The Undiscovered Country really encapsulates a lot of different contexts and vantage points and perspectives that I hold not only as a human being, but also as a practitioner. And when I say practitioner, in the NLP lens, it's a programmer, right? The person who is kind of the guide or the lead in a session. For my world, it's the coach, right? I'm the coach with a client. So as a coach, I always think it's an incredible honor to sit down across from someone and start to explore their world, their situation, their context. And to me, it really begins as an undiscovered country, which implies that there's a lot to discover, right? So that's how I begin to any one of my sessions. As it relates to understanding your internal world to manifest more of your external world, I think whenever we are in a position where we want something to be different, right? Which is to say we are in a feeling or in a situation where we feel stuck and we want to get to somewhere else. It's often because that path or that version of ourselves or that world, and we could just use the straight analogy here to country, is as yet unknown or undiscovered, right? And so it's not only important to understand what that external outcome we want is, but it's really important to understand and have a felt sense of the internal states that we are going to need in order to navigate that new terrain, right? That new experience. And so I think of it in terms of both internal, my own undiscovered country. I'm still learning about who I am. I think about it as the stance of a coach and sitting down across from someone else who is as yet undiscovered to me. And so I can help them on their journey to discovering themselves better in their particular situation or current situation. And maybe most importantly, I see it as a lens as when we are trying to step into a new situation, a new experience, a new stance, as discovering together, me and my client, that country that they want to step more fully into. I could get more detailed than all of that, but I'll pause there and see what questions come up.
I like how both you and Carla and Carla got happy when you said Star Trek, by the way, even though that's not the direction we're going in. So just rein it in, people.
Yeah, rein us in.
Right, rein it in. Carla, did you have a thought bubble brewing above your head just then?
It's a little more personal, but I just remember being with Chris as he was discovering how much he liked helping people discover that. And so I was just kind of having that memory and thinking like, yeah, like, and I remember I'm an architect, but I really like this work. What do I do now? Kind of thing. Yeah. Watching that and just, it's so much fun to hear where you are now from 9 years ago. You know, like you just said that, I was remembering a few of those conversations we had. So.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
That makes me feel seen. Thank you for that.
Yeah. It's like, wow. It's kind of the end of a couple conversations that we're still, I didn't even know we're still hanging there. So that's cool.
Well, this is a question Carla, did you have something you wanted to say?
I'm appreciating the undiscovered country in terms of walking off the edge of one's own map of reality. So then you have to start to put puzzle pieces down to try to figure out what's there, which is where it starts to get to be really fun, because the question can be, well, what would you like to have there, rather than what is there? Yeah. So cool.
Well,
really nice.
The metaphor is really great. The movie itself, like, we won't go into the details of that.
Chris said it possibly wasn't the best Star Trek movie.
No, but there was a metaphor.
Scholars debate whether there is a best Star Trek movie. Let's just put that to bed right there.
But there was a metaphor. I mean, part of the storyline in there, if I'm remembering correctly, was sort of this, like, it was about like facing your fear, or about the thing that you were most afraid of becoming some kind of a strength for you. And that part of the metaphor seems to fit pretty well, where it's not about terrifying you, but it's about discovering how much is in there.
Well, I think this is important. This is a question to anybody who wants to speak to it. I don't think transformation or being in a state of constant learning is that fun for a lot of people. I mean, I think that it can be beautiful and euphoric, and we can get really, or maybe some people are naturally drawn to it. But I think that what you're talking about is almost a paradox, perhaps, Chris, which is the sands are shifting beneath my feet. I need to go somewhere else. I don't know where somewhere else is. Help. And so maybe we could speak a little bit to the uncertainty, to the fear of it, the euphoria of it, the delight of it. I think that is what we're talking about when we're talking about transformation.
Yeah, I almost want to hear Carla and Carl speak on this too. I can share my 2 cents, which is just maybe a big double underline yes, that it is incredibly uncertain. Uncertain is the word that also comes to mind for me. And I think when anything is uncertain, there can come with it a certain a concern or a worry. And then as you chunk up that uncertainty, whether it's chunking it up to maybe a project you're working on, or a company that you started, or a whole career change that you're endeavoring upon, those concerns and worries quickly become existential fears. And so, yeah, it doesn't always feel good to step into that new country that is, by the way, we don't know if it's unsafe or safe, or we don't know yet what it is. We just know that it's not known, right? Which can create that fear.
Yeah, evolutionary biologists have a way of describing the phenomenon in fossils whereby everything seems to stay the same, and then for a long time, and then things are different, and then they're the same, and then they're different. They call it punctuated equilibrium. And I've often thought that this is a fairly decent way to describe a manageable process of evolving oneself. Pretty much the same, and then okay, pretty much the same, and but each of the is an up-leveling toward what the person regards at that point in their life is really important, whatever that is. It's all custom work.
Yeah, and maybe I'll add there. I think not only is maybe there's some uncertainty or fear when that, I kind of think of that, Carl, like a step change, that punctuated equilibrium, where there's a not knowing of what you're stepping into, but there's also a leaving behind of what you do know, of the comfortability, of the stability, whether it's been giving you a good experience or not, it still has been certain, right?
But that sand going out from underneath your feet that LiYana was mentioning, that is generally an unpleasant sensation, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is, and there's a after a while, you get a little bit of the hang of recognizing that the sand's going out from under my feet again. Ah, okay, well, like I've survived this a few times before. I'm going to survive this one. I don't know how, but I will. And we try in the way we teach to be able to bring in a little bit of levity, because that humor and curiosity are things that carry you through some of the most unpredictable and uncomfortable times. That when there is some humor, when you can be able to enjoy some of the hilarity of life too, you get more creative, and that gives you more options. So there's a importance too in also being able to learn how to not take ourselves quite as seriously, and kind of like, what's this going to be? And yes, it can be really terrifying, the transformation. I've learned very quickly in working with clients that I have to remember how terrified it is for them, because I get so excited when the sand starts shifting, because like there's something new here they're going to discover about themselves, and I know that it's going to be amazing. And they might not know that yet. And so I have to like, oh yeah, we'll get through this really. And so, yeah, kind of space, as opposed to my getting excited while they're being terrified.
And can I add to that and share, and maybe do this is before putting the cart a little bit before the horse, but as a student and then later as a TA, watching Carla, you and Carl do that so wonderfully, have that levity and create that space that is hilarious, as Carl likes to say. I remember helped me at times look at this situation whether it was a demo or a subject matter that was really heavy that we were talking about, and kind of look towards, is this something I should be scared about? Is this something that should like be a really big weight? And to be met with that, that just like really honorable, respectful humor is a wonderful experience. So you guys are doing that great.
Thank you.
It's really hard without it, because it.
Yeah, it's just hard. it's just hard and painful.
Yeah.
Well, what else brings out someone's courage, or someone, I mean, any of us or any of our clients, their courage, their willingness, their curiosity, their excitement, even for change in career or life? What else would you?
The first word that came to my mind was desperation. That's what brings it out in most of us.
You think that's what Chris is doing? He's like, how can I just get my client to be as desperate as possible?
Yeah.
Well, Chris doesn't do it that way. There are versions of it that are done that way, though. Good way to generate repeat business. What a good question. I'm just wondering, like, wow, what? Would you ask that again, LiYana? That was.
Well, we have one item on the list, and I'm curious if we could add others. We have humor as something that really helps it not be so bad, and in fact, probably okay and survivable that the sands are shifting. So I'm just wondering what else we can put on the list that brings out someone's courage to make a change or make a leap.
A mirror that knows they can do it.
Oh, that is very nice.
And that's a lot of what we teach people how to do, is to hold that space for another person, to be that mirror for another person. But it's not from it's from an understanding that any human can do it. But when somebody is there with you and says, you can do this, and you're terrified. I mean, I think of like the little kid jumping in the pool for the first time. The thing that gives the kid the courage to jump in the pool usually is the parent that's going to catch them, but is saying, you can do this. It's okay. It's going to be okay. And it's kind of the same thing through all of life, that when we have that person in our life somewhere that knows we can do it, it does give us more courage to try.
Yeah, I think for me, what I have noticed with my clients and for myself as well, the foundation that underpins all of it is rapport, right? The ability to mirror and backtrack and on all the different levels, whether it's, behavioral or identity level. But there's also just something it's just really nice to talk to somebody about yourself for an hour or two every once in a while. Like just having the focus and the attention be on you and your life, I have found is for some not a normal experience. And so to be able to have that, number one, and then to be able to do it in a practiced way can really, similar to changing the rudder on a ship over time, create big change for people.
And there has to be something, well, Carla mentioned desperation. This gives us motivation to move away from what we don't want to experience. And there usually has to be some kind of sense of where we're going, so we can make ourselves an offer we want to accept, which is a little different than the offer that we can't refuse, but both sides help.
And just pure desire often creates change, or gives somebody courage to really, really wanting something.
I just want to fill in one little hole here, if you would, which is the idea of rapport. And Chris, you introduced it by saying it's a form of mirroring, it's a form of respect, it's a form of backtracking. And Carla, if you would maybe add to this, it's a term that within a month or two of a training, every student uses, fluently, but maybe some of our listeners or watchers don't quite know what we mean or why it's so darn important.
You want to take it, Carl?
Sure. In most environments that are doing education about human personal development and change, at least the conventional ones, the orientation is to get better tools or more motivation or increased energy to overcome obstacles and eliminate limitations and things like that. And this just sort of front loads the whole endeavor, as except for relatively few people whose nervous systems get really excited and enthusiastic about, let's go annihilate some limitations. For all the rest of us, that just seems like an awful lot of work, and as if we're facing an enemy. We're dealing with opposition in like the most personal way. So our approach just doesn't go there at all. We don't invite anyone to overcome anything or eliminate anything or annihilate anything about themselves. What we invite people to do, and we actually make it learnable and doable, is to come into, well, that word rapport with themselves, alignment with themselves. It's an experience of respect and appreciation even for how they've been and where they've been and who they've been. So there's nothing they have to overcome. And that seems, when people are in great pain, that seems either not very relevant or maybe impossible. But boy, it's really relevant, and boy, it's really possible. So when we're not turned against ourselves, it's harder to go in the direction we want. If we're turned against ourselves, we end up getting all kinds of sideways. And it makes everything much more painful and much more difficult. It's really fun to just let that, to work with people and let all that opposition to self unwind itself, which it'll do really quickly, given just the slightest little bit of encouragement and context of safety, which is what the training classroom provides, and what people like Chris, who do such beautiful work with people, it's what they provide. Like from the first second that Chris says hi, you're in a context of being safe and welcome and respected, and then after that it just starts to get magical.
I would say the two different kind of elements of rapport that we break out is the one-on-one rapport, one person's rapport with another person, which is a creating that space of safety. And it's different than kind of a cognitive creation of that. And then the rapport with self. And so it's all about kind of the relationship you create with other people and the relationship you create with yourself, and how those are very much the same thing when you get down to it. And that experience of being in a safe place where you can talk about yourself for about an hour or 2 hours, whatever the session length is, whatever the format is that you're working in, you know, Chris is right. It is just such a rare thing in the world to focus on yourself for any length of time, but to focus on yourself in a way where respect is continually being brought in and encouraged. And when we do focus on ourselves, kind of in the privacy of our own homes and stuff, we often focus with where we're missing some respect. We're not respecting all of our experience. And so having another person on the outside who is holding that with some respect and creating some safety and continually encouraging us to be able to have that focus on self, that can be really life-changing for people. That's kind of that's where we start with this. And like what Chris is doing is, so, you know, in sessions and working with people has so many more skills to it, but that rapport is really, when people settle down, when people feel safe, they can face just about anything. They can go just about anywhere. Without it, it's really hard. I always kind of wonder what courage really is. Because there's what we do when we don't feel safe, and there's what we do when we do feel safe. So I don't know actually how we define courage when we kind of think in that way. Chris might have something I'm watching his face.
I have a few thoughts that come up. I mean, the first is, as you both were speaking, the difference between forcing it and finding it was coming up for me as the difference between being in rapport with another self, which is to say a client, and yourself. And when you're in rapport, it makes it easier to not have to force it, which can be sometimes a bit of what Carl was saying, an overcoming of boundaries, or maybe even a violation of values that we hold that we're not even aware of. And when we're in rapport, we're setting it up so that we can find it. And I think courage, there's maybe a gray area in there where I think I have this conception that in order to be courageous, I have to force through something that is scary, right? I have to overcome something that everyone else, including myself, would automatically feel kind of fearful or to be afraid in. But perhaps there's another form of courage where the fear is not there, and it's more of having faith that you will find it. And it's just then about taking the step into that path.
That's cool. Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
It
is. Oh, it is.
So Chris, can we talk a little bit more about one of the other things we have on this list, which is what we want to change into, or, you know, what the desire is, as Carla said. And you said previously that change depends partially on our ability to see a different future for ourselves. Say more. Why is that? What have you experienced and discovered?
Yeah, and I know that we had talked about this before, and I think, you know, this conversation is making me think that perhaps change doesn't always depend on it, especially when perhaps the change is not scary, or it's just a normal course of growing and becoming human in the way that we all know how to do that. However, for those situations, those contexts where it's scary or we're stuck or we're not able to get to the version of ourselves or to the outcome that we want, then yeah, there is a bit more work to do to get to that undiscovered country. And I'd also like to expand the word see, because see kind of is just targeting the visual. And really, when we're doing this work, it's not just about seeing that other version of yourself. It's also about hearing and sensing and feeling, and sometimes olfactory and gustatory. So it's really creating a fully realized sensory version of ourselves that at first is not there, right? If we were already there, then we wouldn't be asking to change this thing. So we have to create models and maps of what it might be like when we are there. And the more we do that, especially when hitting all of those sensory experiences, the more we give ourselves an inclination of what it will be like to be in that new state, which helps that part of ourselves that freaks out or is afraid of the uncertain, the unknown, right, start to calm down a little bit. And normally there's this tension that gets created when you start doing that, where it starts to get a little bit more comfortable there, right, in that new career, that new job, that new experience, which then puts a little bit more pressure on where we have been. And so then we just put our attention there and get a little bit more in rapport with that version of ourselves that we aren't leaving behind, right? But we perhaps aren't going to stay with for all of time.
And it strikes me also that there's probably some things that crop up along the way that maybe no one could have known about that are wonderful as you're going from a place that you didn't want so much to a place you want more. I'm just really struck by this, some of the people that you're supporting, Chris, which is like new space that's never been there, new market that hasn't been there, new answer to something in a market. And I think we have to be, you please answer this yourself, but I'm wondering, it seems like we have to be paying attention along the journey for the newness as it shows up. How can we plan for newness sometimes, right? So anything you want to say about staying open to what's emergent or sort of undiscovered on the road to discovering the undiscovered country?
Yeah, and I have to give a shout out to a very particular part of the training that Carl and Carla will take you through. That is not quite on the identity level. It's more of a behavior capability level. So it's a little bit more practical. That I use, if not every day, every week, and it's the lab profile. So it's the difference between making decisions or moving forward with options or procedures, right? And I think that part of what is so unsettling of going into a new undiscovered market or country is that no one's ever been there before, right? There is no step-by-step approach or manual that tells you how to do that. And so one of the tactics or techniques that I employ is starting to create multiple futures, right? Create multiple possibilities, which is an options way of looking at the future. And as soon as you start doing that, then you've immediately moved from no movement to a whole bunch of possible movement, right? And then you can start comparing and contrasting and looking at each individual client's map of reality and seeing the way that they would like to navigate these potential futures, right? So not only is this true in individual identity level change work, but it's also true in I would say society or market level or whatever external criteria or context you want to use change work.
Okay, that's really well said.
One of the things that is kind of obvious to us, but I want to mark out a little too is one of the benefits of the getting a sense of a whole sensory system based, like being able to see, hear, feel, possibly taste and smell what it is you're wanting or reaching for, is that it is that then as you get to it, it is recognizable as something you were aiming for. And in the people you're working with, Chris, it seems like being able to set up markers of success in when a lot of these people are working in realms where the success isn't going to be really clear for a significant period of time, to be able to have some smaller sense of being on track towards what they're reaching for, so that they can actually start feel like they're being successful and they're on their way to success. Even
Yeah.
so there's a whole lot of those possible futures that starts to give them some things when it starts arriving in their life, to be able to go, oh yeah, that I actually aimed for that, as opposed to it just happened to me.
Yeah. If I can build on that, absolutely, that is true, that creating some of those markers along the way can be an incredible boon, especially when you are in such undiscovered country. And oftentimes, similar to the experience you were talking about, Carla, when you start to get used to the sand shifting underneath your feet over time, you start to get used to the uncertainty, to not having the answer, right? And in fact, those markers become less external and more internal, right? Like, oh, the market fluctuated and I kind of felt okay, like I wasn't going to die, you know? And that is an indication of progress.
Yeah. That's cool.
Very, very. I think I got something out of that. Multiple, not just one possible future, but multiple. Apparently I must be options oriented. So this maybe is going a little more granular. We'd also talked about the kind of amazingness of paying attention to a single word, which is a skill that we learn through transformational NLP, and how that can really help give a deep understanding of someone. Do you want to share a little bit more about that, Chris? And I know Carla and Carla, you'll have things to add as well.
Yeah, I, for some reason, just love this idea that someone's entire map of reality, you get an insight into with one word that they use, and a whole state of either stabilized or unstabilized identity can be expressed with just one word if you're listening for it. And there's a story that I think Carl and Carla are familiar with, that when I was still doing architecture full time, I was working with a set of clients. It was a husband and wife team, and they were building a house, and I was helping them design their house. And I was working on different options of the kitchen, and there's many different ways to design a kitchen. They had a pretty good floor plan, so we tried it in a galley kitchen where there was just, you know, counters on both ends and you kind of walk through it. Did a U-shaped where there was an island in the middle. I probably designed, honestly, 10 to 12 different kitchen layouts. And the reason I was continuing these iterations was because the wife kept coming back and saying, this isn't quite right. This isn't quite right. I really need, and here's the word, a functional kitchen. And as an architect, and even as a person, everyone wants a functional kitchen, right? But that means so many different things to so many different people, that one word. And I was in the training at the time, and I think we had just done keyword backtracking. And in one of our many sit-down meetups, we again presented a kitchen design that wasn't quite to snuff. And I asked, well, what does functional mean, or functional how? I forget exactly how I asked it. And then you could just see her whole physiology kind of not relax, but expel. And she said, I just want to be able to pick up my Cuisinart and put it on the counter without having to reach into the pantry and lug it across the kitchen. And so for her, a functional kitchen meant that she just needed to have her Cuisinart, which is a heavy mixing machine, right, in a place where she could put it up on the counter without having to walk across the kitchen. And the truth is, every single kitchen I had designed would have met that criteria. We could have put a drawer by a counter and you could have lifted out the Cuisinart and put it on the counter. But until she discovered that that's what that meant to her and had it mirrored back to her and acknowledged, we were going to keep going in this same path, you know, until we either ran out of money or they fired us. So we then moved through the
Or
situation.
you happened onto one she felt was functional. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Or yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the one word can mean so much.
Wow.
Along the lines of, golly, I just want to be happy and fulfilled. Right.
Well, certainly
does that
that's
mean?
part of the linguistic, part of neuro-linguistic programming.
It is built into the name, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's one of those things that people don't always pay attention to. And I find one of the places that they really forget to pay attention to this is when they are looking through profiles for things like online dating. If somebody
Oh my
uses
goodness.
their word, if somebody uses their word, they're pretty sure they've got a match, and they can get a little ways down into the relationship and realize that that word doesn't mean the same thing for the same people. And people can be really hurt by that. But you said you wanted blah blah blah, and this isn't. Yeah. And imagine that comes up with investors for businesses and employees, like that's going to be all over the place. That there's a lot of keywords we use. There's a lot of like buzzwords we use that don't actually, unless we know what they mean, don't mean much anymore.
Carl, anything else to say about this linguistic bit about unpacking words?
I'm quite taken with Carla's relationship dating app thing, looking for long-term relationship. Yes.
Looking for commitment, looking for, oh
yes.
my gosh.
Asterisks, and then there's
communication.
Like minimally half a page to say what they mean by that. But they'll have a chance to work that out at least by the third day, maybe. But that's up to them.
What I find when I talk with some people is that they often never find out about it, and then they get into these long-term relationships and can sometimes literally be years down the road wondering when that particular word is going to actually get activated, you know, like when it's actually going to happen in the relationship because the other one said they wanted it.
Yes.
So true. Okay, my job is to keep us on time, so I have two last questions for us. This one is for Chris. It would be kind of weird for you, Carla and Carl, to answer it, but okay. But this one's for Chris mainly, which is, do you have anything you want to say to Carl and Carla and NLP Marin, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this a bit, and I think it's hard to, you know, we're just talking about words. It's hard to express the meaning of the word thank you as I experience it or feel it, for putting together decades of this context of safety and also the extremely adept practical skills and tools that help people live better lives with for themselves and other selves. And so I think just a heartfelt thank you and gratitude for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you are welcome.
Yes.
And thank you.
You're welcome.
It's so really fine to know that you are participating in the world and in the business world the way you are, with using what you learned with us and mixing that into everything, all your other competence. So thank you.
It is, you know, Carl and I do this because this is something we love and because we think it's important. And when our students go out and put it out in the world and put their own spin and their own creativity behind it, that's kind of like the most gratifying thing as a trainer. to be able to see and to see that success and to see them enjoying what they're doing. So.
Okay, last question. This one's for everybody. Carl, did I cut you off?
No. You probably did, but it was probably for the best. Please go on, LiYana.
It's your job to cut us off.
But not to miss the gems. So this is for everybody as a last little zinger. If you could leave our listeners and watchers and audience with one thing, so if they took one thing from today about change or transformation, what would that be?
I think that, oh, please. I'll be quick. I think that it's doable, and that these people that are on the call with us have a particular ability in creating structure and systems and conditions that teach you how to do it, right, and help you learn along the way.
Thank you.
And I would add that there's a future version of all of us that appreciates the heck out of the present version of us for arranging to let the present version of us turn into them, the future version of us. So it's like high fives and appreciation all around. And we'll just pay some attention to the past, without which none of us would be here, right? So it's a team effort.
The first thought that went through my head when you asked that question, LiYana, was about transformation is like, how do I say this? It is what makes life so enjoyable. It's kind of like at the heart of it all, that we are always transforming. And it can be really, really fun. Sometimes in the middle of the change, it's a little crazy and scary, but majority of it's just fun and lovely.
Oh. Wonderful. Well, real quick, there'll be links to learn more about Chris, Carla, and Carl right below this conversation, in case you want to follow up with any of them more. I'm just really excited, Chris, that you get to bring this into how people are creating and thinking about new spaces, so that it's right. Yeah, I just really appreciate that about your work, and really appreciate
my kitchen now.
I already told her. I already said that. Get in line.
I think the secret is never move the Cuisinart.
Just keep it on the counter.
If you use it. If you don't, just keep it in the cupboard.
Chris, Carla, Carl, thank you so much for this. It's really been rich and useful and lovely. Thank you all. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
All right.
Everyone.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the next conversation.
See you all later.
See you all
Thank you.
soon. Bye for now.